This meeting is now being recorded.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining this webinar today to introduce you to the new quantity and unit cost format, which is now incorporated into Fusion. Our webinar will be divided into 3 segments, and our objective today is to cover the new quantity and unit cost format, also known as the Q&UC, and how it pertains to preparing locally funded or future projects, initial project proposals, and final project proposals. I'm Sandy Melching with the Chancellor's Office Facilities Planning Unit. Our presenters today are all with the Chancellor's Office Facilities Planning Unit, and they are Lan Wang, Huang Nguyen, and Carlos Montoya. Just a few things to go over before we begin. If you miss any part of this webinar or would like to view it again, we will have a link to the recording of this webinar, and we'll post it on Fusion's homepage under the links section next week. Also, we have rolled the plan year, so if you would like to start adjusting or adding projects in Fusion, you are now able to do it. If you would like to practice using the new Q&UC, you can do so in the Fusion training site. If you need a username and password for the training site, please contact the CCC Foundation. And finally, if you have any questions, we ask that you type them in the webinar's chat box feature in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. We'll be monitoring these questions, and we'll answer them at the very end of the presentation. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Juan, who will start us off.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. So I'm just going to do a really quick high-level overview of the Q&UC, and it's going to be covered in more detail when we get to the preparing the IPP and the FPP portion. So now we're just going to quickly get ready. Okay, so Q&UC can be accessed through the JCAF 32. So we're going to bring up the JCAF 32. And the Q&UC button is at the very top of your form. Okay, so built in the Q&UC are your CCI and EPI factors for the base estimate and also your budget for the submittal plan year cycle. I'm sorry. Just a second. We're trying to fix the view. Is it not working?
It's working.
Okay, we're good now? Okay, thank you. And so the EPI, again, and the CCI factors are built into the Q&UC. And with the Q&UC now integrated into Fusion, what we see will be a streamlined process in terms of less data entry and more of your automatic calculation and auto updates. Okay, so with that said, under the estimate column, all these totals will auto-populate into your JCAF 32. These totals, for the most part, most of these totals can be overwritten, but in general, there shouldn't be a need to overwrite them. There is the option to view the cost in addition to your default estimate. We have the option to view them escalated to both the budget and the midpoint of construction. In terms of the calculation within the Q&UC itself, all the formula-driven items, such as your architectural fee and your project management, these are all set to calculate automatically. So once the JCAF 31 is created, the numbers will be generated. Okay. So in terms of the actual data entry, it's really minimized to just primarily your site costs and your other costs. We do have 3 line items that have been added to the JCAF 32 and therefore the Q&UC. One of them being your DSA fee. Now districts have the option to allocate it to your P phase, to the P phase versus the working drawings. And this is so that we can accommodate the DSA, the collaborative process with DSA. In terms of the fee structure that you're seeing here now, the DSA fee has been superseded, and so there's programming or reprogramming efforts underway to get the formulas updated within the Q&UC. There's also the feature for non-state supportable costs. For your non-formula-driven line items that are done manually, manually entered, there's the option to designate item costs that are non-state supportable. Here we have including for the preliminary test and your other costs. Since we're talking about non-state supportable, I want to mention that to the extent districts need to revise their costs for the formula-driven items, take, for example, project management. If a proposal were to come in instead of the calculated total here, 131, let's say if the district were to want to bump that up by another 100,000, we would see that as an excess non-state supportable. And so instead of overriding the total here, the right thing to do would be to include it under other costs so that we can capture it as non-state supportable, the excess portion. Okay. So now I want to drill down to the site costs. Again, I'm keeping it very high level. These will be covered in more detail later on. To enter your site cost detail, you will go to the Edit button, and the screen will come up, and you'll have two options. You can enter it manually, or you can choose to go with the building standards. For the purpose of the IPP, we're going to keep it high level, so a single line entry, manual entry, will be adequate. As you see here, single line entry for each of the site costs for an IPP. The FPP, on the other hand, we would be looking for more details, and so you would opt to instead use the building standards format for the site costs. Okay. And likewise, there's non-state supportable options available for tracking that. So the old way was we would go to the 32 and adjust for non-state supportable there. Now with the Q&UC, that's all being captured within the Q&UC and also calculated and then repopulated back out to the 32. Okay, so cover the site costs. In terms of the building costs, they're coming in directly from the 31, and so to the extent there are updates made to the 31, those changes will also be captured within the Q&UC. And again, there's a box for identifying non-state supportable. I'm sorry, Carlos, what's going on? Did I just?
We're going to maximize the screen.
Oh, I thought we couldn't do that. Okay, that's better. I could see it now. Okay, so again, the building costs are coming in directly from the JCAF 31. Any updates are going to show up automatically in your Q&UC. Likewise for your equipment allowance. You scroll down. I don't think I could go there. Why is that? We apologize. We're having a little bit of a difficulty.
It'll go away.
It'll go away? Okay, there. So likewise for the JCAF 33, the allowance amount will populate here. So a lot of the information in the Q&UC are being auto-generated with the exception of your manual entries to your site costs and your other costs. Okay? And one thing I wanted to go back to is the non-state supportable amounts. To the extent one is identified for your building cost, Fusion will automatically calculate the portions from the formulated items such as your project management. It would automatically calculate a proportionate share based on your non-state supportable into the non-state supportable column in your 32. So it's doing all the calculation with regards to non-state supportable component. I'm not able to scroll all the way down for some reason, but the project data and the project schedule are now part of the Q&UC, so any entry or update will be done in your Q&UC rather than the JCAF 32. Okay. So now I want to switch over back to the 32 so we can just kind of go over it at a very...
You can dismiss those if you want it.
Okay, thank you. So the 32, all the information are generated. So the 32 is pretty much ready to go. We've got the total cost generated from your Q&UC, as well as the non-state supportable and the project data and the schedule. The only edit that you might need to do would be if you needed to reallocate or allocate the funding between the state and the local side. The default feature is to have the 100% all under the state funded column. So if you needed, for example, to allocate some to the local side, there's two options to do that, either by adjusting the percentage or the dollar amount. The percentage is a little more practical in that you could just simply update for the percentage that you need, and then the local side should automatically update. So the adjustment for the percentage is needed only to the state side of the column, state column. Okay. Again, the other option would be to adjust the dollar amounts, but you would need to input the precise dollar amounts. Otherwise, it'll show up in purple, okay, as not being reconciled. Okay. In terms of the views, it also has the ability for the additional budget and midpoint view, similar to the Q&UC. You can also change it to round it to the thousands. Okay, there you go. Just keep in mind that on this screen, it's just the view option, and so if you're needing to allocate the funds, make sure that you are actually in the on the default page, default screen. Okay. So again, pretty much with the implementation or integration of the Q&UC into Fusion, the JCAF 32 is basically summarized and ready. So now I want to get back into the Q&UC to kind of quickly talk about existing projects. With the rollout of the new Q&UC, to the extent the existing project already has a JCAF 32, what gets populated here will be the numbers from your JCAF 32, the pre-existing version of 32. And so as part of the effort to get the new Q&UCs ready for your next 18-19 submission, in addition to making the usual annual updates, such as for your inflation or index adjustment or your schedule at the bottom of the Q&UC, an extra effort check to do will be to make sure that your amounts in the estimate column are matching up to the actual amounts being calculated by the Q&UC. So you would want to look for discrepancies, which would show up as overrides in red. And so in the case of this project, the numbers are coming across, aligned. Does not seem to be an issue here. And so we're getting through P and W are fine, but we can see that as we get to the construction portion, for example, the contingency amounts, even though they do reconcile, we can see that the total is in red, so it's in the overwritten form. So we still want to get rid of it so that the total here does not stay stagnant as the project progresses and gets updated. So we would just simply zero it out or delete it. Here. Try again one more time. There you go. And allow the population, I think I just did it onto the wrong amount, wrong line item. So let's give it another try. Contingency, where are you? Okay, there's a contingency. We'll go ahead and zero it out so that the correct, so that it can be in the non-overwritten form. And we also need to address the board's energy allowance because it's showing up as a 0 because that's the number that was in the old 32 before we added the energy component as a separate line item. And so now that it's there, we can go ahead and remove the 0 to allow the calculation to do its work. And there's another adjustment we need to make in this case because the board's energy, before it got its own line item, it was being budgeted under the other category. And so as you can see, the numbers are duplicating. And so we would want to go in there and just simply delete it, delete the duplication. And it's just going to take a second. So with the edit feature, the QUC tends to roll back to the top of the page when we apply the edit function. So let me scroll back down. Okay, so now we can see that the amount's gone, so there's no duplication. So the adjustments that need to happen have taken place. And we've got one more, which is the LCP. This one here is showing up as a 0, again, because of the lack of the line item in the pre-existing JCAF 32. So we'll, again, delete it to reconcile it and allow the calculation to take place. And so now your totals between the JCAF QUC calculation and your estimate should be ready to go. Okay, so with the new rollout of the QUC, the form itself should be pretty much ready to go, pending your usual updates and then the minor adjustments that I've just walked you through. Okay, and now I'm going to hand it over to Juan.
For the remaining portion of this training session, we will be creating a locally funded future project, turning it into an IPP, and then finally to an FPP. Let me first get out of this QUC. Okay. In order to create a locally funded project, in the upper right-hand corner, all you would have to do is click on the Add Project link. It'll open up a new form that's blank, and then just go ahead and enter the information in the drop-down boxes and empty slots. For the purposes of this training, I've already created a locally funded project, so we'll go ahead and go to it. Just go ahead and click on the checkbox, and then view edit again in the upper right hand corner. For this, we'll go ahead and click on edit, and all the information has already been pre-filled earlier. The top half of the project has already been filled in for Bakersfield local project. Doing the occupancy date, new facility, new construction equipment, and category B with a little description for this training session. The main portion for the locally funded project is a quick summary. You'll have to enter in the funding date in the lower half. It's just a drop-down menu here. If it's a state-funded project, then you'll have to enter the estimated funding in the state funds requested column. If there's any non-state funded portion that the district would like to put in, then just enter that information here. in the non-state funds column. Since this is just a quick overview of the project, if you click in the lower left-hand corner for the JCAF 32 icon, as you can see, the JCAF 32 is blank. This information won't be filled in until we move on to the IPP. As part of the locally funded project, if you click on the distribution of space tab, sorry about that. You can click on the add icon here in the lower half, and then another pop-up menu will show, allowing you to add different space types. And then you can enter the information here for the ASF and secondary ASF. And all you have to do is save it. If you ever would like to make changes to this, then all you have to do is select a row, either edit or delete. As with the JCAF 32, this JCAF 31 will not be completed. It will still be blank, as will be the JCAF 33, so you won't get your equipment costs in this portion of the module. With that, you just click on Save, and you have your new locally funded future project. Next, we'll go ahead and try to convert this locally funded project into an IPP. So I'm going to select that. It's already been pre-filled out. In the upper hand right-hand corner, I'll click on the View Edit. As you can see, the pop-up window shows up, and then you click on the Prepare IPP button here in the upper right-hand corner. Once you do that, click on the Edit button in the upper right-hand corner once again, and you can make changes as needed. For this part, we'll go ahead and fill out the JCAF 31. You can find that either in the Distribution of Space tab in the lower left-hand corner, or also in the Forms tab on the right-hand side. Once you click on the icon, the JCAF 31 will open up, and you can add new space by clicking on the Add New Space link in the upper right-hand corner, and then by clicking on the row, you can add the room types and top codes. Tabbing over, you can start entering the information that's pertinent to this building. If you continue tabbing over, it'll go over down to the next row, or you just click on Save once you're done. If you're trying to do a reconstruction for any of these space types, then on the left-hand side, just click on the checkbox, and that will show that you're trying to remodel this facility. In order to see the cost guidelines on the upper right-hand corner, go ahead and click that icon for the double arrows, and you'll see how much funding you'll get for this space, including the reconstruction costs here. Moving up in towards the center of the screen, you can see the JCAF 33 button. Once selected, you'll be able to see how much equipment funding you'll be getting for this project. Go back. And then once this is completed, all this information will be auto-populated into the Q&UC. Next, we'll go ahead and go toward the Q&UC, either on the Forms tab here, or also on the project phase here in the lower left-hand corner, JCAF 32. I already filled out this earlier, so usually this will be still a blank form. So in the upper right-hand corner, click on the to Q&UC button, and we'll go ahead and get started filling this out. As mentioned earlier by Lon, most of this information is auto-populated, formula-driven, so we're just going to go ahead and go down toward the preliminary plans phase in section D and E. Those are manual entries by the user. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the Add New Entry button. You click on that, you can enter the type of cost, the description of the cost, and the value. And you can click on the checkbox to see if it's supportable or non-state supportable, and click on Save. If you ever need to come back and make changes or deletions, you will come here and then click on the X in the right-hand side to remove the row. And after all said and done, go ahead and click Save. The screen will refresh. Scroll back down, and you'll see the new cost here, right there. The same can be said for section E for the other costs. Same type of entry. Click on the Add New Entry in the upper right-hand corner, and once you make that entry, click Save, and then you can move forward. Working drawings, section E, also has the same option for extra costs for other types of costs. Once again, also add new entry in the upper right-hand corner. Clicking on that, you'll be able to add the other types of costs for this project. You'll click Save and then move out of there into the construction phase. For sections A through E, for the IPP, we're just going to enter something super generic for this section. Click on the Edit button in the right-hand or left-hand side. And towards the bottom, you'll have to click on the Manual Unit Cost View Cost Entries button, at which point you'll move forward to another screen, and then towards the upper right, click on Add New Entry. And you'll be able to enter generic site costs for this IPP. There. You select the unit for this. I prefer each for this section for the time being, and the costs for this. Select Save. Once you click on Save, it'll refresh, and then scroll down, and you'll see the costs here. As mentioned earlier, if it's a non-supportable cost, you'll just go ahead and click on the checkbox on the right-hand side of each line item. In addition to doing that, next to the units here, you will want to enter the quantity of each. Usually it's 1 for the time being. And then the math will calculate, and the cost will add up on this side, on the right-hand side. Moving down towards Site Development Service, Site Development General, and Other Site Development, also the same option here. Click on the Edit on the left-hand side, and you'll be able to see the same type of box, pop-up box as before. You'll just have to click on Manual Entry and then add new entry in the upper right and go through the same motions. And afterwards, just click Save and move forward. Once the site costs are entered in, you scroll down and you'll see that the reconstruction room types and the new construction room types have already been auto-populated here. If you have costs that go above and beyond that, and right in where I highlight, you can enter other non-supportable types of costs by clicking on that section and then mouse clicking outside the box. The final other entry that you can do right here in construction is section H. On the left-hand side, you'll see the edit button as well. Same functionality in the upper right-hand corner. Click on the add new entry, and you'll be able to enter certain costs, and then save. Once that refreshes, you'll scroll back down, and the new cost will be right there. And there we go. For contingency, architectural engineering, test and inspections, construction management, all that is auto-populated, formula-driven, so we'll just go down, and the only thing you have to fill out here is the project data, section 12, the outside GSF. If you see anything that's in red, that means other changes were made on different forms and it hasn't had a chance to update yet. All you have to do is select that red text, delete that information, and mouse click outside. And as you can see, it auto updates. Also over here in the equipment, there's red text, delete, mouse click outside, and then the information updates. Final entry will be the section 13, the scheduling. Go ahead and enter the information here. Without this information, the JCAF 32 won't populate. So this is actually an important piece of the Q&UC as well. Once everything's entered, scroll back toward the top and click on Save. And then go to the JCAF 32. In the upper right-hand corner, click on that button. And you see the final JCAF 32 for this IPP. Let's see, the final thing they could do here is in the state funded column, there's these boxes in there that you can make changes of the the district funded portion. Either 50%, 60%, state funded. District funded will take over 40%. As you can see, this number here, you can just make changes as you need to in terms of distribution of funding. And that, the final result will be down here for the percentage sharing between state and local once you enter that information. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carlos for him to take this IPP and convert it over to an FPP.
All right. We actually created an IPP that is already saved as an IPP approved. This is what some of the districts out there will be seeing right now as the plan year has rolled, and as you get ready to start converting some of your IPPs and start preparing FPPs. this is what you'll see here. In the test project here, you'll see the status IPP approved. You'll view, edit. One of the first things you'll want to do is you'll want to click the button to the top right, prepare FPP. With that, again, sometimes things change, we understand, between IPP and FPP. So one of the first things you'll want to do is you'll want to go through your JCAF 31 and review your distribution of space, or your space array. And if you need to make any edits, now would be the time. Prior to developing that estimate, since the JCAF 31 feeds into the JCAF 33, which also combined both feed into the quantities and unit costs. So you want to make sure you do this step and verify this first. And again, Huang walked you through this process where you can add space. You can adjust the cost guidelines. We'll have the new cost guidelines up in the live site. This is the test site, so you're not seeing the latest CCI. And then once you're done making the changes on the JCAF 31, you'll save it and then populate your 33, and any changes that you make, you'll see here as well. In this case, when you go to show detail, we'll need to adjust the EPI to the most recent. Again, we'll hit save, and we're good to go. So at this point, you could either return to the JCAF 31 to double check, or you can just close out of here and then go back to your Q&C, make sure it's in edit mode. To get to the Q&C, again, project phase, there are a couple of different ways to get there. This is my preferred since it's right on the main screen that pops up. But if you were to go into forms, there's also the JCAF 32 here as well, which will bring this form up. Again, since the 32 now is not where you enter this information, the 32 is now a summary screen, pre-populated for the most part from all the information being imported into the Q&UC. That's where we'll do most of the editing and work when you're preparing the FPP and the cost estimate. This is really just to view, escalation, round your numbers to the thousands, kind of get that high level summary, and then the ability to kind of see what the estimate is, and again at the FPP stage to understand what your total costs are going to be both at budget and midpoint, as well as the ability to adjust your contribution levels to the project. So with that, we'll click and go to the Q&C. And again, here you have the header for the Q&C. You want to make sure that you are checking the boxes for the phases that you're requesting. In this situation, in this scenario, we are requesting all 4 phases: preliminary plans, working drawings, construction costs, and equipment funding. Again, you'll want to go through and make sure your estimate and your budget CCIs, at this point, the Chancellor's Office adjusts the budget CCI, but you'll want to make sure that your estimate CCI at least is updated and reflected to the most recent CCI available. And you also have the options towards the end before you migrate out, or actually at any point in time, to check and view your budget or your midpoint costs. And we'll go through these in just a little bit. I just want to show you where that is and what that functionality is before I kind of scroll down throughout the document. So again, not a lot changes between preparing an IPP and an FPP, other than really the level of detail. The functionality is pretty much the same. You still have your options for where you allocate P, where you allocate your DSA fees. The DSA fees themselves, we're still working to add an additional tier. DSA is updated a couple of times. Preliminary tests, other costs, you edit those features. In fact, we have a couple here that are already preloaded. you determine whether or not you want to make these costs non-state supportable. Same thing in working drawings. You also have the option to allocate to working drawings your DSA fees or your project management fees. This is a little bit of a change. Before, sometimes you could split your cost of project management fees between working drawings and prelims. Right now, with this form, it's one or the other. The DSA fees, same thing. And then again, as we continue to move down, we have other costs in working drawings with similar functionality, where you click edit, you can add your new entries, your descriptions. Once you hit enter, save, it'll refresh, and you'll see the line there for you. And the biggest difference, I think, will be between an IPP and an FPP will be in the site costs themselves. Here in this situation, what you would do is you would go in, instead of hitting manual unit cost, you actually might have a manual unit cost. You'll want to make sure you delete the one that says either pre-use, Q&UC, or if you're developing an IPP and you had one in there, you delete that generic level and instead replace it with your actual unit cost for your site work, depending on each phase of your estimate and the drop-down pick list. So you would select, in this case, utility service. If we're looking at electrical, transmission and distribution, we could go through and pick. You would check the box on the item that would apply to you. It's a pretty extensive list. If you find what you're looking for and you're no longer looking for something else in that area, once the box is checked, you can continue to move on. Select another item, hit save, it will refresh and you will see both items there for you. And then all you would have to do at that point would be to adjust your quantities. You also, again, have the option of determining whether or not each particular item is non-state supportable. And once you go through and work through utility service, you would move down and work and develop your costs for site development service, site development general, other site development. And then, as you can see, E and F, your reconstruction costs and your new construction costs, they're both being pre-populated from the JCAF 31. If you check the box on any of your spaces or any of your room types, they'll show up in the reconstruction item. And in your new construction item, you have all those items that were unchecked. And in this scenario, the other difference when it comes to non-state supportable cost is there is this box for non-state supportable cost. This is actually an additive box or an amount. So basically, we have $2.7 million here as the total for the cost guidelines. If there is some element of your project that was not reflected or was above and beyond, you would add that additional amount in this non-state supportable column. And you would see that the cost estimate actually increases by that amount. And then as you continue to work your way down the Q&UC, you'll see sections 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all auto-populated. The construction months for your DSA inspections, those actually calculate once you complete the anticipated time schedule. In this situation, since this was an IPP that was already approved and filled out, the schedule is already in there, so it gave us a preset number based off of that calculation, off of that schedule. But again, schedules change from year to year when you're developing an IPP and your FPP, so you'll want to make sure that these dates still reflect the plan and the schedule, and you'll want to make sure that these dates also are in line with the funding release for capital outlay and state funding. And again, outside GSF, you'll have to update that to make sure if there's any changes on the JCAF 31, these numbers would be read in assignable square footage. You'll want to make sure you clear that and update that to get the most recent information. And so at this stage, this estimate is pretty well done, barring any changes that would happen during an actual FPP planning process. But you then have the option to see what this would look like at an updated budget or midpoint. You'll notice since the CCI here is the same, there's no difference between estimate and budget, but you can see the midpoint numbers actually escalated out based off of the schedule that was in section 13 down on the bottom. And so all of this information, once it's completed, you would hit save again just to make sure that you saved all these changes. And then you would go out to the 32. And this is where you would make your adjustments for your local contribution. We can make a quick assumption here and adjust this to 50%. You'll also notice that the amount for non-state supportable costs is pre-populated into your non-state supportable column at this point. And so as you adjust, you can see what your costs are in an estimate. And then if you wanted to adjust to see what your costs would be at the midpoint, selecting the midpoint escalation view will allow you to see that. We'll also round just to make it a little simple, round to the thousands. So in an event, you can determine what your budget is going to actually, or could be in the future. And if you had a local bond program and only had a limited amount, you could adjust your state-funded contribution to really target what you actually had available. For example, clicking back to the estimate column, the $12 million that you have available during your estimate would be escalated out to $16 million. And so you'd want to make sure that as you're preparing your FPP and you're planning for the future, that you would have the $16 million available. That's one of the main features that was missing from the existing process. And now what we've done with the Q&UC is kind of brought that back out and put it out there so that the districts can actually see and use this as a better planning tool. And once those changes are made here, we'll want to make sure that we're at the estimate escalation view. We'll hit save. And go to the project phase. If you were to hit save here, this should be updated with the latest information for your particular project, which it is, the $16 million.
And with that, I'd just like to remind everybody that this recording of the training session will be online within a week, and also that Fusion has rolled so that you can start doing these submittals as soon as you can, and with a call letter to come out pretty soon. So now we'll take questions from the chat box.
We have one that's already come through. So our first question is, Will LCP costs still apply with SB 854?
The programming has already been implemented. It's been a long process. So in the meantime, until we know for sure that it does not apply, even though we recognize the passage of 854, we're going to just go ahead and keep that component in there just in case until further notice.
Next question is, how does Q&UC apply to A3 projects where we have specific structural upgrade costs?
For A category projects, it's most likely that your specialist may need the detail level of information, because for an A category project, we want to make sure that it's the least cost solution. And so with that regards, it's possible that most likely your specialist will rely on the more detailed architect estimate to be made available so that they can go ahead and review and address any issues earlier on in terms of putting the budget together for their review of the proposal.
And that's also an opportunity as well for you to utilize the manual entries to incorporate those more detailed specific items that are not available through the pick list that was actually made and pre-populated in Fusion itself from the RS means. Because that is the database that we're using currently to generate all those unit costs.
All right, next question is, says currently the system is only open for use during the IPP, FPP, and 5-year plan submittal timeframe. Will that be extended for year-round planning?
I don't know really on that. It's a processing as far as when the certification is done. So
at this point, it is only open during the planning process for FPP, IPP, and 5-year plan submittals. We are looking at how do we make this a tool that our districts can use year round. So we will take that into consideration as one of the comments here that will kind of move forward. Next question.
I don't think that's a question. I think that's a comment.
We do have a comment from in the chat box here regarding kind of overall developing IPPs. One of the things I think, one of the benefits is streamlining kind of and incorporating some consistency in the estimates that not only that we see, but also that districts now see. Some of the escalation elements that are incorporated in the Q&C have all been kind of automated and are no longer behind the scenes. We wanted to kind of bring that out so that districts can see that and plan accordingly. There have been a number of times when we've been working with districts who submitted a certain amount of contribution, and as we go through and escalate, they realize that their contribution level, moved up from $2 to $4 million during escalation, and they only had the $2 million to contribute. So this will help in some of those situations to give the district the information up front. So in terms of scope and development, there is the ability to add those IPP costs for the site at a very manual level where it's just one line item kind of generally, as opposed to diving into the individual site costs. And we are also working on some override capability where even that ability would get kind of pre-populated by overriding the cost in the Q&UC. So we are looking at ways to improve the efficiency of this tool, despite it already incorporating a number of efficiencies to the overall process.
All right, next question is, will the funding amount come from the budget or midpoint of construction value?
The funding amount will be at the midpoint of construction value. That is your finalized budget.
All right. So I guess unless there's any further questions, we will bring this webinar to a close. It will be recorded.
Oh, one more question before we close it up. Will the call letter clarify the additional detail with IPPs?
The call letter should be coming out soon. I don't necessarily know if it's going to get specific on the IPPs, but generally speaking, there shouldn't be much of a change in terms of impact with the level detail for an IPP.
Yeah, I think maybe that's one element that we did not clarify. You will still submit your IPPs. You'll use this form instead of any other form. The JCAF 32, instead of entering the information there, it's the same level of information pretty much except that it will be included into the Q&UC, which will pre-populate the JCAF 32, which the JCAF 32 is recommended, but not a requirement. It's basically at the IPP stage, it's what is used to calculate any contribution points.
Yeah, and just to add to Carla's comment, the display may be different in that you're actually opening up the Q&UC for the IPP, but the level of detail that you're going to have to provide is essentially the same because we're keeping it high level, so it's consistent with the JCAF 32 summarized level.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we had another question come in. Many districts have a large number of FPPs in the queue. Do all of them need revision?
For the 17-18 projects that are approved in our system, those costs were finalized prior to the rollout of the Q&UC, so there's no updates needed on the district side, assuming those move forward. For certain proposals that we've been rolling in terms of the FPU, providing updates in the past on our end versus the district, for those that didn't make the cut, they are now in the fusion as IPP approved, and the individual specialists will be working with the district in terms of whether they're going to continue to update those costs, assuming those are still the district's priority. So that's a dialogue that would need to happen between the specialists and the district, depending on the priority where that project stands for 18-19. Well, we would move the highest priority for the IPP, just to clarify, for the 18-19, assuming a project that we've been rolling for you, meaning we've been updating the cost for you on our end, to the extent, because they didn't make the 17-18, as long as the district confirms, provides confirmation that that project that didn't make the 17-18, that's now in 18-19, as long as the district confirms that it is the highest priority project, then we will continue to take care of the cost updates. Otherwise, they would become regarded as a new proposal if it's not the highest priority for 18-19. In that case, the district would need to go in and update the cost on their end.
All right. With that, we will bring the webinar to a close, stop the recording, and this will be available within a week. And
on Fusion's homepage under the link section.
Yeah, so when you log into Fusion, on the top right corner, there'll be a link section. A link to this recording will be there. And as always, the specialists are available, so if you have any questions as you're working, you could always send us an email or pick up the phone and give us a call, and we'll hopefully walk you through it. So with that, we want to thank you for participating. We had a pretty good-sized group today, and we look forward to rolling this out into the field. Thank you very much.